What's up guys, Max here, back with a Killer Instinct update. You might not have heard these for quite a while. I didn't really do many Killer Instinct updates, especially after working on the end of Season 2 and the beginning of some Season 3 trailers with Rash and stuff like that. But I do have good news that in the future, I will have some exclusive videos on the channel of upcoming characters and cool things like that you might have remembered from the past, because Season 3 is kind of upon us. The PC version of the game and Season 3 are going to be coming out in early 2016, and things are kind of ramping up for that. And one of the bigger ones, and something that I've been heavily anticipating ever since the character was announced, is Shadow Jago. Now, some of you guys might have recalled there was a bit of details and breakdowns of Shadow Jago, which I'm going to talk about in this video, and also talking about when he's actually going to come out. The last time we heard something was that Shadow Jago was going to be released this year, that he was in fact going to be a character that would launch in 2015 and wouldn't be a part of the 2016 Season 3 roster because he was fan-funded. It was literally, if you purchased the Shadow Jago skin, you were able to kind of fund the project that would make Shadow Jago a real character, and that indeed happened, raising like over $100,000 for tournaments and stuff like that. So they're making him a real character, and he should be out fairly soon. All things considered, with the release dates and the scheduling of what's been going on, I'd be surprised if we saw Shadow Jago come around like Christmas time. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, mostly because development places aren't going to be there the entire month, and most of the time, if a character's been completed within a fighting game or any kind of release for DLC, they've been done for a little while. Like, they've taken like a little while to submit the character, wait for things to go through processing and approval, and then they get launched at a certain time frame. So I have a good feeling that probably within the next month or so, we're going to be seeing Shadow Jago as a fully playable character. But what is indeed going to be fully playable? So you guys might remember when Shadow Jago was launched in the game, he was just a skin of Jago, and the nice thing is that if you have that skin, you will indeed have Shadow Jago as a full playable character when he is available, which is going to be very cool. I don't know if he's going to be available to DLC purchase outside of that. I'd imagine he would be, but aside from that, if you already have the Shadow Jago skin, you'll have the character when he's ready to go. Now, the big difference is going to be how much like Jago is he going to be? Is he going to be specifically a clone character, or what exactly is going on? So you might remember from the Shadow Jago boss battle, there's a couple of differences. He had a slide, he did some unique moves with like overheads, and like his forward roundhouse was a lot different, stuff like that. But they have actually released a bit of information, and we can talk about it. There's a couple of things that they had from Evo on how he's kind of like a lot different. Specifically, the laser sword isn't a special move. The wind kick's input trigger is now a slide instead, and he does not have wind kick, so that's not like Jago. He has this different thing, like the back heavy punch where Jago would do an overhead, and his forward roundhouse. Both have been replaced with completely different moves. It looks like back heavy kick is now an overhead kick, so instead of like the punch version, there's a kick version. And forward heavy kick is a push kick. I'd imagine this is going to be like the standing 1-2 kick that you saw Shadow Jago doing to you in the boss fight. He can also double tap attack buttons when performing special moves to spend a chunk of his meter to enhance the attack into a surge special. So kind of think like, you know how you can EX certain moves in this game and they kind of turn into supers, they use a bar? You can sort of think these as like smaller versions of EX, where they like amplify moves. I'd imagine that they're going to add multiple fireballs or something along those lines. They might have better frame data, but we will see. That actually makes Shadow Jago very unique because it kind of doubles over all of his special moves. He can still throw fireballs. He can actually throw air fireballs, which makes sense because he's an Akuma style character, and he also is not going to have a regular uppercut special that you remember from Jago. They say it's more vertical and it doesn't move forward in any way, so this thing goes like straight up. Don't anticipate you can use this to anti-air people jumping at you. It's going to be a little bit different. It's probably better for anti-cross-ups, which is actually very cool. He has this quarter circle forward plus kick, and it triggers a new dive kick move from the air to the ground. This works as a linker, and this is pretty much Demon Flip. You might remember from Akuma, from Street Fighter games. This is very, very, very similar to a Demon Flip style move, but he can also do it in the air just like Akuma could do in the Marvel vs. Capcom series, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 specifically. He's also got his forward and back dashes are much longer and travel in duration than Jago, and he has a brief invulnerability. So you know how Saberwolf can kind of like dash forward and dash back and stuff like that? Pretty much Shadow Jago can kind of do this, and the closest character I could think of that has an ability like this, where they kind of phase in and out of like, you know, actually being there and not being there. Think of like Dimitri and Darkstalkers. I'd say Darkstalkers 3, that's a pretty good example of how a character can dash forward where they disappear and they appear on the other side, that's going to be Shadow Jago's regular dash, is that he can actually do that. And he can also cancel his dashes into throw, into uppercut special at any time. So if you want to actually cancel that little teleport move, you can't do it with a normal, but you can do it with a special move or a dive kick, which is pretty crazy. That one seems insanely good. But they're talking about a few things that have changed ever since then. The slide is still unsafe on block, but surge versions are not, so that if you make the special move and add that little bit of a bar to the surge version, it'll actually be fine. You can also cancel into his overhead kick, which is very cool. It's just like regular Jago. And Shadow Jago's slowest Endokuken is actually the same speed as Jago's fastest Endokuken, so you can kind of anticipate that Shadow Jago is going to be throwing a heavy amount of fireballs. The surge version of the uppercut special does a huge amount of extra damage, but it does set up an interesting juggle. There's a lot of differences between the surge versions of his specials and the regular versions. The Shadow version of the dive kick can also recapture, so he does have a Season 2 traditional recapture combo. And there's a couple other things, but they're kind of small. They've added a little bit more swords into his animations, like a lot of people wanted more sword stuff of that big meat cleaver he has. So he will have a little bit more. And there's a few other details, but that's mostly it. Shadow Jago's looking pretty interesting, especially in his instinct. So, Shadow Jago's instinct is similar to Jago's. He gets good frame data on everything. He gets like +2 frame data to almost everything. But if you hit the opponent with an Endokuken or you can dash through them, he attaches this thing called the Dark Tether. And what that does is that it allows all of Jago's Shadow and Surge moves to cost half the amount, and it drains the remaining half from the opponent's meter. So this is kind of similar to Spinal, where if you're able to execute a Surge or Shadow move, it'll take meter from you. Also, if Shadow Jago presses a Heavy Punch and Heavy Kick, which is the instinct activation, while the tether is attached, it's going to do this interesting pose, and it builds 1 meter for you instantly, but it also gives the opponent 1 meter. So it's kind of a risk-reward, but I think that's worth it because with this tether stuff and how all this stuff is working, it really feels like Shadow Jago is going to be dependent on meter, where a lot of his specials are going to require meter to do very good. And that's pretty much it, and based on this, Shadow Jago's sounding really interesting. He might have some similarities to Jago in terms of normals and the way specials act, but in terms of how you actually will play the character, Jago's seeming like he's going to be kind of a crazy-ass kooky character, which is good because I think he's always looked awesome. The thing I'm definitely hoping for is that we get a multitude of colors for the character, maybe some accessories. I don't know if that ends up happening down the line, but we will see. And as soon as there's more information, I'll be back as soon as possible with an update of what's going on with Shadow Jago, hopefully some early gameplay footage, and I'll keep you dudes updated. Other than that, let me know what you guys think of Shadow Jago. Hopefully he's going to be coming up pretty soon. My name is Max, and I'll see you guys in the next batch of Killer Instinct videos.